Okay, this is my workbench. I thought I'd show you around a little bit today. Show you some of the projects I've got going on. First of all, right up front here we've got some superliners, and it's actually a very simple project. I'm just getting ready to dull coat them. I've had them for quite a few years now, and I just never have gotten around to it. And so you can see from this one, I'm just basically pulling them apart, taking the windows out, diaphragms off, and of course the bottoms off as well, and just getting ready to dull coat those. This one, as you can see, is only partially done. It's got windows in on this side, not on this other side, and of course the diaphragms are still in place. Over here we got trucks, diaphragms, other stuff, parts of the superliners. You know, I thought this would be a fairly simple project going into it. You know, pop the windows out, pop the diaphragms off, and go outside, spray it, take only a few minutes and it'd be done. But it's not that easy, and this is why. This is a section of windows. Now the windows come as 4 large pieces. You can see one of them in here sort of hanging off, and the way they're positioned in there, they're actually extremely difficult to get out. Pulling one of these apart, well, it takes me better than an hour. Maybe I'll get quicker at it, but so far that's what it takes. And so this one, that's why it's partially done. I started to get frustrated with this one piece that you see hanging off, and decided rather than get frustrated and potentially break it, I'd just leave it alone. And so the last 2 days I haven't had a chance to work on that at all. Once these get all pulled apart, of course the idea is I'll put numbers on them. The ends, well, you can't see it real well, but it doesn't have numbers yet. So they'll get numbers and they'll get dull coated. And then another thing I've been doing is, while I've got the diaphragms off, for a while now I've wanted to make them look more like Amtrak diaphragms. Of course, out of the box, you can see it on this, it's just black. That's how the Walters diaphragms come. And so it's just plain black, which is alright, but Amtrak has a metal plate on the end of their diaphragms. Those 2 metal plates contact each other, and it prevents the rubber from actually wearing out. And so you can see what I've done with this one. You can see that silver end on it. Of course, the very end, that plate on the end, is a kind of a dull gray in color as well. Is that more? This one's exactly the same. That more accurately represents what an Amtrak diaphragm looks like. And Steven actually was kind of the one who gave me that idea. He found these markers. They're Sharpie metallic silver markers. You can buy them at just about any office store. And so what I did is I of course used that to coat this edge, and all the way around with it. And then I used a little bit of it on the front, and then what I did is I dulled it down by, after it dried, I rubbed it against a paper towel. I actually tried rubbing against another diaphragm as well. You don't get quite as even a coating that way, but if you rub it against a paper towel, it helps to dull it down and kind of give it that worn metal kind of appearance. And so that's been one of my latest projects. These are, as you might have noticed, these are a little older superliners. They don't have the new shiny metal finish that Walters advertises now. They're the old plastic ones. Of course, let's see, back here we got the windows piled up for them. Looking further back, we got some Acela locomotives. Those, actually, I bought those years ago, and they got used and used and used and slightly abused, and honestly they're quite worn out. And so I started taking apart and determined that, having never been maintained, they're very dirty and very worn, and so those are currently being rebuilt. And actually, to be honest, they're much closer to finished than they look. I just haven't been too diligent in finishing them up. I could probably get them done in just another day, maybe 2 days if I ran into some problems, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. The Santa Fe locomotive over here is getting some lighting upgrades. I should say it has gotten them. Again, something I just have to put it back together. I could probably have it done in an hour, but I've been dragging my feet about it. It's real easy to get distracted from one project to another, and well, that right there. 5547 is a classic example that I'll get it done. I have to get a decoder for it. Actually, that's been the main holdup so far. Behind that we see actually a now finished grain elevator. Yes, I have a finished project on my workbench. Steven helped with that actually. He did a lot of the rust streaking you see on it, and I've had a couple people ask already, well, if it's a concrete building, why are there rust streaks? Well, you figure the window sashes and the roofing for sure are all metal, and over years and years, as it rains, that would rust, and eventually the rust would streak, and so there's some rust streaks, and it definitely breaks up the plain white of what would otherwise just be a plain white concrete building. Now looking over here, we got a fleet of engines. If anyone has any trouble guessing what railroad I model now, well, I'm not sure quite what to do. Not all of these are projects. Some of them are just a classic case of I haven't put them away yet. This first one is an SD70 Mac that Steven sent out. Actually just got it yesterday, and it acquired a few injuries in shipping, is what I imagine happened. You can see the rear handrail for the rear platform sitting on the roof, which of course is not its normal position on the engine. That's not such a big deal. I'll have that fixed in just a couple minutes. I just haven't gotten to it. I was working on the superliners most recently, but the thing that really has me worried, and I'm not sure how it happened, it was packaged pretty well, is this truck frame on the rear truck actually broke. The frame itself is intact, but the two little plastic tabs that attach it to the rest of the truck assembly there is what broke, and so I've got to pull that apart and see if I can glue it back together. I may have to call up Ather and order some new ones. Some of these other ones are just sitting out here for DCC. I've got a couple of GEs out here that are all waiting for DCC. This old Santa Fe Jeep also needs DCC. Of course, here we have one of the SD70 Aces, which I reviewed a couple months ago. That's actually a nice locomotive. I really do enjoy running it, although one problem I've had develop, and honestly, while I do enjoy running it, I really don't run it that often, so this is also bizarre, but the top headlight burned out, so that's what that's waiting for. Over here we got some cars. Let's see, some wires. Some of the projects. Containers. The containers are out mostly because I don't have a place to put them yet. They came in plastic bags. They weren't resealable or anything, so I took them out of their bags and had to look them over, and then, well, couldn't really, I mean, I could put them back in, but they'd just be hanging, so I gotta get a box or something for those. Yes, I realize I've got them on a bulkhead flat, and that would not be the way to transport those. Now the rest of these, I think I've got one that's got a broken coupler knuckle to be replaced, but other than that, they're out because they haven't been put away yet. Over here we got a DCC test track with Santa Fe 891 on it. This is a -8, another GE product. Of course, you can hear it. Power is on to the track. This is here because I had a little problem with it yesterday. This also came in yesterday. Steven sent it out to me. He's got quite a few of my models out in New Hampshire still, and so they're all slowly coming out. But this one was out here because I set it on the track to make sure the programming was all right, and you know, address is good, and it seemed like everything was just fine. But then I tried to get it moving, and I heard the engine rev up, and interestingly nothing else happened. You know, it didn't go anywhere. I tried it forward and reverse, and the engine revved up. It sounded great, but it didn't move at all. So I ended up calling Steven. He knows actually quite a bit more about the programming aspect of DCC than I do. And so I called him up, and he says to me, well, it's an Atlas model, right? I said, yeah, it is actually. And he explained what was wrong. Apparently Atlas, in their sound models at least, they build a three-part shutdown sequence. And the first part basically puts it in neutral, and so it still loads up, it still revs up, but it just doesn't go anywhere. And so somehow, probably last time it had been on the tracks, it had been part way shut down, but not all the way, and that was the problem. It was easy to fix. The way to fix it is just shut it down all the way. You have to double push the F9 key if anyone's looking for reference, and so that takes it to its next stage of shutdown. You do that once more, and it shuts it down all the way. And then you can restart it, and it runs just fine. In case you are wondering, yes, I did solve the problem. I'll even show you. And there it goes. So Steven was successful in helping me solve that one. We are rolling slowly. I gotta adjust exactly what voltages it does what, because it takes off real slow, and I always set my engines to 128 speed steps. I think you get a little more control out of it that way. And unfortunately goes up to about 40 at about that speed that you just saw, and then it just takes off like a bullet out of a gun after that. So a few adjustments are still in order. So other than that, of course, you see boxes back here. Those are full of cars. There's an auto rack, bi-level auto rack, a couple more of them. This one I've had for a while, this Norfolk Southern one I just showed you. Underneath these are actually some new ones that I just got. And they're nice and shiny, but to be honest, most freight cars don't stay that way, and neither will these. So they're just waiting to be weathered. some other freight cars. Steven actually brought these out. You know, sometimes we'll get equipment, realize we've got a whole lot of the same equipment or a whole lot of stuff we maybe didn't need, but you know, it looked nice in the hobby store. And so he and I traded a few cars around, and those are some of his old cars, which some have been weathered, some haven't. Some still have their stock couplers. I've got to replace them with Sargent couplers, so it'll be compatible with mine. Let's see, back there we got some engines. Well, engine boxes. I think one of those is the box to this Ace that you saw earlier. That's basically the workbench. Over here we got all the tools, pliers, rotary tools, of course a whole lot of cans of paint. I actually, let you know a little secret, this stuff is what I use as dull coat. You can get it at Walmart or Kmart. I couldn't tell you offhand how much it is, but it's only a couple dollars for one of these. They say it dries in 10 minutes or less. I typically give it about a half hour, but it's quite a bit cheaper than dull coat. The effect is exactly the same. It's this Krylon stuff, but it's just what it is. It's a flat, clear finish. It's basically clear spray paint is what it is. Of course, they say it's used on metal, wood, wicker, and more. And so I picked it up one day figuring, well, I'll give it a try. It's cheap enough to try it on a freight car that I don't particularly love. And you know, it worked real well. And so I've been using that ever since. Another thing that's real useful is go to your local office store. Staples or any place has this. It's basically a can of air. But if you got to dust stuff off, that's the way to go. It's about $4 or $5 for a can that size, and you don't use it real fast, but it's definitely something very useful. Let's see, if we turn over here, we got sort of the storage area. Of course, here are some of the Walthers shiny superliners. You know, they look great, but I got to figure out what to do about that shine. From a distance, superliners do look quite shiny, but up close, not so much. So I may try dull coating one of them, although it's nearly $70 a pop. I will admit I'm nervous about that. Then a few other Amtrak cars, Viewliner, some baggage cars. Some more of the plastic superliners without that finish. These ones I'm not afraid to dull coat at all. I've dull coated other Amtrak cars, and they look quite nice. In fact, some of them are over here. Let's see, we got a Viewliner here. Amtrak Sleeper. This one actually, I'll have to do this another time, but I'll have to show you. This one I've got marker lights on it, and I put a DCC decoder in, just a simple 2-function one, and connected the marker lights to that, and so you can control which end is lit. There's also some interior lighting in it. And then an Amfleet car. This one's got dull coat on it as well. It's hard to tell through the box, of course. The box got that shiny window. A North American Ethanol switcher, that still needs DCC. I bought that, well, when it was brand new, basically, when Walthers had just come out with it, and so I didn't buy the DCC version, which, you know, now I wish I had, but I didn't, so I'll add DCC and maybe sound eventually. But yeah, that's the workbench. I've got a couple projects going on. Of course, I always have more projects than I think I'll ever finish, but I think that's just kind of a way of life for a model railroader. Oh, one thing I do want to show you, we talked about this just recently on our blog, actually, was the exact rail trucks. Let's see, I've got a couple here. This is a set here with 36-inch wheels. I don't know how well you can see it, but I got the fine scale wheels, as I mentioned, and one of the real neat things is it's got brake beams and brake shoes and everything in there. Now, I mentioned it earlier, the trucks flex a bit, which allows them to track better. Let's see if I can show you this at all. Might be kind of tricky, but what you'll notice about it is the truck side frames are connected on a hinge down in this area, and so they're actually quite capable of just flexing a little. It's not a lot, but you can kind of see the wheels wiggling back and forth. What I'm doing is I'm flexing the truck's side frames in opposite directions. And what that does is it allows for better tracking. You know, when there's a small rise or dip in your tracks, one wheel will have to go through it, or frogs on switches are a classic example, actually. You know, there's a little bit of a dip there. The wheel has to go through it, and rather than having the entire truck be rigid and have to move with those changes in the track, this allows the one or however many wheels affected by the bump to move on their own. Let's see, I've got, well, here's a pair of, this is just to compare them. there's a pair of standard 36-inch wheels. I pulled these off of a ballast hopper, actually. I'll set that aside for just a minute. If you look at those, you can see the width of those wheels. And now these are the Exactrail fine scale wheels, and I know you can't see it real well in this video, but they are considerably narrower than their stock sisters, I guess you could call them. And so I really like the fine scale wheels a lot better. However, on some cars you just can't see the trucks real well, and so to be honest, it's probably not worth the extra money if they're just going to be hidden. But on some cars, tank cars or intermodal cars, actually a lot of your spine cars are just completely open around the wheel areas. Those are going to be where you want to put those if you like that fine scale look, because they're so visible. So anyway, that concludes our tour. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to email us or leave comments, or of course you can go on our Facebook page as well. That'll be our tour for today. I think Steven's going to show you his workbench coming up in the next couple weeks. Little spoiler alert for you.